Now we're going to our closer, Professor Nnamdi Nwulu, who is Director of the Center for Cyber-Physical Food, Energy and Water Systems. He's also a Professor of Electrical Engineering in the Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering Science at the University of Johannesburg. Professor Nwulu, can you give us your closing remarks?
Thank you very much, Professor Mutambara. I'm experiencing load shedding here, so my lighting is very bad, but I would try to make the best out of the situation. Right. Thank you, Prof. Mutambara and the IFK for facilitating such a fascinating conversation. And then thank you to Professor Sidley for a very insightful presentation. I'd like to just give a wrap up about what happened. Prof. Sidley basically introduced his research group, which is the Blockchain and the Cryptoverse Research Group, whose aim is to conduct cutting-edge research in the blockchain space. And then he delved into his presentation, which basically, talked about the origins of blockchain from the cryptography space up until very recent developments like NFTs and DAOs and the rest. Fascinating because further lots of work is ongoing. He mentioned now that he has to keep pace with all the developments in this space. We hear about Web 5.0, Web 5, the fusion of Web 2 and Web 3, which is the sensory and emotive web, which is actually built up on Web 3, and lots of fascinating discussions in this space. Prof. Sidley's presentation touched on many aspects, including the concept of elastic ownership, which is one of the key areas that he harped on, right? And then lots of other nuggets were also passed in the conversation. And then I think a takeaway that I could get, even based on the interactions with Prof. Hadi, is that there needs to be a balance, right, between decentralization. Sometimes centralization can oftentimes be necessary in certain cases. All right, and what that speaks to is we have to, as researchers in the blockchain domain, as academics, we have to come up with a framework whereby we can properly map out areas or methods of properly deploying the blockchain technology, right? It's not enough to just do what is called the technology transplant and just basically deploy it in our various cases or applications. One needs to understand it. One needs to move above the hype and then understand how and when it can be tweaked to the various applications, especially in the African context. And that's one of the things that came up a lot, especially from the folks that asked questions: how can it be deployed in the African context? How can it be deployed in sub-Saharan Africa, essentially? And I think Prof. Sidley mentioned now that there is hope. He gave the example of El Salvador, right, and how even after they have deployed Bitcoin as their legal tender, I think he said 60% of the populace are actually leveraging on the technology. And then for me, my personal takeaway or my personal interest would be how can we harness this technology as it were in the bid to actualize the SDGs, because Africa is we're in the last decade for the actualization of the SDGs, and then if technology can help us in a way as an accelerator towards achieving SDGs, then I feel now that blockchain is a prime candidate that can serve as an SDG accelerator. And there are a lot of instances, a lot of works that are ongoing amongst other players in the university in this space, basically considering how blockchain amidst other far technologies can serve as SDG accelerators. And then one obvious example I can point to is the area of governance, as Prof. Sidley mentioned in his, I think in his almost near closing the remarks, right? Lots of governance issues are at the heart of some of the unsustainable practices that we have. If you have DAOs, if you have smart contracts that beams the light and removes issues of opaqueness, right, then there might be improved governance models such that we can further achieve some of these SDGs, right? And another option is also to leverage on tokens in a bid to tokenize good behavior, right? Such that because most of the SDGs basically are geared towards certain social outcomes, right? But when other resources are used properly, for instance, SDG 2 that speaks to food, SDG 6 that speaks to energy, 6 that speaks to water, 7 that speaks to energy, and the rest, if blockchain can be leveraged to tokenize various players in this space such that they are able to take the right decisions, mitigate harmful emissions, mitigate water pollution and the rest, it can also be an accelerator towards achieving our SDGs. And there are a lot of other examples that that one can give, but time is of the essence. So in closing, I would like to reiterate what Professor Mutambara and Prof. Sidley have said. The aim of some of these discussions is not just to discuss for the sake of discussions, but basically to cause us to put our nose to the grindstone, and then also serve as an advertisement for research students, for masters, for PhDs, for postdocs to join the university in the bid to tackle these problems and fashion out homemade African solutions to the problems bedeviled in Africa. That's all from me. Thank you, everyone. Prof. Mutambara, over to you, please.
Thank you so very much, Professor Nwulu, for those detailed remarks. And with those words, I must say, we've come to the end of this session. Thank you so very much, everyone.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.